Welcome. I know my job is not to welcome you here, but welcome to the best city on earth. We're the greenest city in the UK. We're the happiest city in the UK. Just last year, our Edinburgh People's Survey showed 95% of our residents were content with Old UK as a place to live. And amazingly, some of our wards got as high as 99% satisfaction with the area they live. This really is a special place. And as well as that, the quality of life scores, the accolades that this city gets on an annual basis. About a year ago, Deutsche Bank ranking us as the best city in the world to live. There are accolades falling over ourselves, and sometimes it's difficult to remember just how many awards and recognitions that Edinburgh has got. And because we fail to remember, sometimes we focus on some other stuff that we can remember, like potholes and when we find a bin unemptied. Thank you very much for having me. I did say to a colleague yesterday that I was coming to do a 30-minute speech, and he said 30 minutes sounds more like a lecture. So I hope it's not a lecture. I hope it's more an outline of what our city is and what our city can be. Edinburgh is really a fantastic success story, and the last years in particular have been absolutely tremendous, and the tourist economy has been absolutely part of that success and enabling us to generate a much more diverse, vibrant, bigger and inclusive economy. Tourism and its growth has helped investment and jobs, which has led to Edinburgh being really Scotland's economic powerhouse. Edinburgh is driving the region's economy, and in many ways the region's economy is driving the country's economy. Tourism supporting 33,000 jobs in the capital, sustaining the highest level of inward investment outside London in the UK, and landing major investments like the St James's Centre that are developing enormous amounts of retail offer. The new tourism strategy is an acknowledgement of that success. It's an acknowledgement that we need to shift towards fostering closer working relationships, managing our city's reputation, our place, supporting our people, and improving our environment. The Council is a key partner in ensuring the successful delivery of this new strategy, and will work to enable the kind of change that I think it calls for, and I think is so reflected in the responses by people to the consultation. The Council recognises the importance of the hospitality sector to the vibrancy and ecosystem of our wider economy. And without tourism, the creative industries wouldn't be thriving, our micro-distilleries and breweries wouldn't be springing up across the city, retail, food, education. So many of our sectors would be poorer with fewer opportunities for the people who live here and within the industries themselves if tourism wasn't providing the magic X factor of additional demand that a city of 518,000 people relies on so heavily. Our commitment to the industry and the benefits that our city enjoys from the industry, I think, is steadfast, both as a council and as a city. And it's not just the economic opportunity for Edinburgh, it's about the culture and arts and everything else that is sustained. 7 out of the 10 top Scottish attractions are here in Edinburgh. The Botanic Gardens, the National Galleries, National Museum, among them. These are not just visitor attractions, they are part of the recreation landscape that exists for our entire city. They are part of our cultural and artistic ecosystem, and no other city in Scotland can boast such a rich tapestry of offer. Visitors sustain so much of what makes up our culture and recreation in the city, and that shouldn't be forgotten. The 20 million day visitors that we get as a city, generating more than £1 billion for our economy, sustaining our retail offer, our food offer, culture, and so many other aspects of our city that we take for granted, are too often taken for granted in the discussions about tourism more widely. Since I became council leader 2.5 years ago, looking at the statistics of economic growth, we've grown something like north of 15% in that time. The economic growth since May, June 2017 has been astronomical. We're growing at something like £2 billion a year. And to put that in context, in Scottish context, because we always like to compare ourselves to Glasgow, especially when the statistics are favourable, over that same period, Glasgow's economy is growing by about £1 billion. Now, we're a smaller economy because we're a smaller population, So the proportionate difference is enormous, and it just underlines the real difference in change that we're having to deal with. And people are no daft in Edinburgh. They can see that investment. They can count the cranes that are building the investments in new hotels and new everything right across the city. They can see that money on the ground. And here comes the bleating bit. Over that same time, the council's budget has went up by 42 million. That's about the same amount of money that we've had to put into just standard additional pay rises for the workforce in that time. And the council's responsible for so many aspects of place management in the city that it is incredibly difficult to make the argument to the people of this city that the link between that huge, amazing economic success that our city has been over the last 2.5 years isn't filtering through in terms of additional budgets for people on the ground and in their communities. So while we try our best to invest in local services, and we are right across the board, people feel that difference. An increase of 4.3% in council revenue over the same time as a 15 to 20% increase in the economy is a discrepancy, and it is felt as a discrepancy in our communities. You'll find a box at the back of the room. You can slip any additional donations to the city in. So the point of me mentioning that is not to make you all feel terribly more sorry for me. Roddy's already made you feel enough sorry for me. It's to really articulate the disconnect and what the challenge is in closing that loop. If there's no other reason to support the tourist tax, and I think there are a great many reasons to support the tourist tax, it will close the loop in people's minds about the generated economic benefit for our city, and particularly in such a vibrant area as tourism and hospitality within the city that has such a rich offer, and the net benefit that people can see on the ground. 14.5 million pounds is what we forecast every year into our city. It's not money to be swamped in a generic council budget to pay for staff increases. It's real additional money that can be spent on managing tourism better, managing the impacts better, improving the lived and visitor experience, and crucially investing in our communities across the city. It's essential for that. And I think, having spoken to mayors from across the city and our links as a city, it's quite clear that those cities that have implemented the tourist tax have not seen a decline in their hospitality industries, far from it. But it has given them a link and a revenue. Can I take this opportunity to thank those in the room who did support our plans and continue to support our plans? And I know that not everyone is in that category in the room, but I hope that the process that we laid out, the engagement that we had, has given some solace and some reassurance that the approach we've went is not a downbeat one. It's an upbeat one. It's a solution-focused one to try and close the loop in people's minds, create a revenue stream that will be able to have a positive impact on the city for forevermore. I hope our rationale is clear, if nothing else, and I want to absolutely commit to the industry in the city that as we work through even more of the details of implementation, which is where I know some of the concerns lie, that engagement will continue. Resources are not just in terms of tourist tax, but it's another core reason that partnership is so important within the new tourism strategy itself. The council, with our, as I've already slightly overstated, difficult budget situation, struggles to do a great many things without the partnership of other parties, and other parties who are willing to put in their time, their expertise, their investment, and their networks to try and create solutions. We wouldn't be able to do half the things we're able to do that are really at the frontier in terms of transforming our transport network, in terms of transforming our housing system and making it more supportive of people, without additional help and support, both in terms of money and in terms of expertise. And that's what I hope very much that partnership that's fostered through this new strategy is able to deliver in terms of tourism. I think it's important that our offer meets the reputation that we've built up as a city, the fantastic reputation based on your hard work over the years in honing really what is absolutely fantastic about Edinburgh. we have become the cultural centre of the world during August, and the festivals, which have become the biggest arts festival in the world, I, for one, couldn't be prouder that they call Edinburgh home. The world comes to Edinburgh, and it's our chance to show Edinburgh to the world every single year when that happens. The festivals have become part of our identity, and people, regardless of what some may say, have taken them absolutely to their heart in the decades that they have been here. They've been here a lot longer than I and many other people in the room have. The 2/3 of people in the city who will have been at a show either last year or will go to a show this year is a huge endorsement, but we can't stop the process of continuing to engage with our communities in terms of spreading access and facilities and venues across our city to make sure that everyone feels the benefit of everything the festivals and our cultural offer has. But without our own identity being part of it, there are things to be incredibly proud of. I'm proud that Phoebe Waller-Bridge brought Fleabag here before she shared it with the rest of the world. I'm proud that we got Stephen Fry and Emma Thompson and Hugh Laurie before anybody else. I'm proud that right now there are shows, stage shows touring, TV shows airing, and films being shot somewhere in the world that will have been shaped, trialled, or influenced in some way by the Edinburgh festivals. The world brings their talent here to showcase, and we get, as residents, the ability to experience that and enjoy it before anyone else. We are the world's previewers, and I think that's a fantastic thing that our city should continue to be absolutely proud of and embrace. We have to continue to invest in new venues like Leith Theatre and Leith to spread and manage the impacts of tourism across the city, and we also have to continue to look at new ways to provide those opportunities into arts and culture so linked with our tourism offer, like the £15 million Place programme that the council signed up with the Scottish Government and indeed the festivals themselves to create real opportunities into those sectors. It's the world to Edinburgh and Edinburgh to the world, and I think few things that happen in the city do it more quintessentially than the Edinburgh tattoo. I'm on a bit of a mission in life. I've got, I think, about 30 or 35 years, and I'm not hugely keen on whiskey, actually. But I'm going to try and get the whiskey-soaked thing, like the tattoo announcer, because I just think that's the best voice anyone can ever have in their 60s. So I'm on a mission to spend the next 6 years getting that peaty, wheaty kind of whiskey-soaked thing going on. I don't think I'll succeed. It's one of the best examples because it manages to bring the world in terms of audience. It brings the world in terms of performers, but it does it in a fairly uniquely Edinburgh way. And when the announcer, with his amazing voice, asks the crowd where they're from, Scotland is always the biggest cheer. The Americans are always about, eeksy-peeksy, but Scotland's always the biggest cheer. It's the international audience mixing with the local audience that makes it such an iconic and Edinburgh thing to come to our city. But there is a feeling among some in the city that our character somehow isn't being showcased, that the amazing things that happen here all year round, amazing as they are, could be happening anywhere else without, I think, an appreciation of the incredibly complex ecosystem that's needed to support those things. But it has caused some, let's call it ugliness, to seep out. I've personally been attacked for being from Paisley. I've been attacked for worse, let's be honest, but the accusation from someone with an SNP emblem on their Twitter account was that a working class boy from Paisley with no built heritage, so to speak of, wouldn't understand the complex importance of a city like Edinburgh and therefore leading to problems. We've seen council officers, three of them, senior council officers responsible for parks in the city, being attacked for being English because English people couldn't possibly understand the importance of parks to the city. We've seen the chief executive of the Chamber of Commerce attacked for being Welsh because she couldn't understand, apparently, the importance of business to this city. I'm quite clear that when you live in the city, you're a resident of the city, you're a citizen of the city, and whether you're from Europe, whether you're from the world, or whether you are from Paisley, you're welcome and you're part of our city, there is not two tiers of Edinburghers, there's only Edinburghers and the occasional Leither. There are synergies with some of those attacks to other things that we can imagine, some things that maybe were painted on the side of buses and in leaflets that were less than honest. And it's the embracing of the painting of the other, which has seeped in quite unfortunately. Now, I don't say that to try and put people back into their box, because I'm not painting those that are raising legitimate concerns with the minority extremists and often anonymous people who purport those views. But I am saying we as a city have to learn the lessons from that process. We can't just rely on economic good sense tackling some of those issues that so many other cities in the world are dealing with in order to combat any potential backlash. We have to look and listen to what the concerns are and be willing to respond to them, not respond to what is said, but listen, try and understand the motivation for why it's been said. I think that's doable. I think perception too often bears out over reality. And my challenge to you is this: keep speaking. This is your industry, this is your city. Keep your voice in the debate, and let's use social media and other tools to try and get the truth halfway around the world before lies have a chance to put their shoes on. Engage with people, attend community councils, speak with heritage bodies. We are one city, we're not businesses and residents in some sort of separate vacuum. We're one city, one community, and we all have an interest in making sure our collective succeeds. Our biggest asset in the city is the warmth of its welcome. I was going to say it's the castle, but I wasn't sure. No, it's the warmth of the welcome that people get. And if we work together and address the genuine concerns that are felt by some, I think we'll make sure that warmth never gets frosty. My other challenge to, I suppose, the industry's own place. We have one of the most spectacular landscapes and skylines anywhere in the world. I know you're all striving to be the best that you can, and you have pride in your business, you have pride in your products, and you're right to have pride. We are an enormous success story. Our offer is second to none. We also need to make sure that our city's identity is felt throughout these events, festivals, and huge hospitality offer. One of the main drivers behind the success of platforms like Airbnb has been the offer of the authentic guest experience, not just the come and visit as a tourist, but live as a resident with John and John's spare room, and John will tell you where the best local pub is. It's about experience, an authentic experience, and why stay in a hotel and get a tourist experience when you can get the script of what a local area is really like and be an embedded visitor, not a quote-unquote tourist. It's therefore easy to understand, apart from the obvious rationale of price, why short-term lets have become so explosive in Edinburgh, because we are the best place in the world to live, so who wouldn't want to live here for even a short period of a couple of days? We have no problem as a city, I don't think, or certainly as a council, with Bill and Moira renting out their spare room to people throughout the year and giving a warm welcome to visitors and letting them know what the great things are to do in the city. And we don't really have a problem with Jill and Jane who go away to somewhere else during 2 weeks in August and use the money that they get from renting out their flat to pay for a big chunk of their holiday. But when residential properties are being bought in their thousands and now virtually tens of thousands in the city to be converted from residential property into short-term lets, it's a massive problem which has to be addressed. When the concentration of short-term lets in our city centre ward alone is 16.7% of the entire Scottish number of short-term lets, we have to accept that we have a problem. Edinburgh has not only lobbied for the regulatory powers over short-term lets, and we've set out the powers we need and why we need them. Our city plan has set out a choice of how we can better control short-term lets within a planning context, using the strength of the regulations that were announced just a few weeks ago and will be coming on stream for us to use as a council by next spring. I don't want to prejudice the view of the planning consultation, but my gut feel and my overwhelming expectation is that the city will come back and ask for very strong regulations. There are 14,000 full properties on short-term let platforms right now. I expect that to be significantly diminished as we go forward. That is not a threat to people who want to rent out a spare room, and it's not a threat to people who want to do it on a short-term basis. But for a long-term basis, taking residential properties out of the residential market and putting them into short-term lets isn't a sustainable option. People get in the flat and the grass market to get the residents' experience. That only works if there's residents left in the stair in the grass market. And we are seeing already stairs being completely taken over, with residents being the exception, not the rule, of areas that were not built as accommodation providers for visitors. They were built as homes for people. So our policy, I think, has been quite clear. We've led the way nationally in terms of the powers that we need, and I hope to see a different model approached that can help both secure, I think, the industry going forward in the city and deal with legitimate concerns. Whether it's climate change, whether it's economic downturn that luckily we're not experiencing, or the booming economic success of our city, which we are experiencing, change, particularly change on the scale that we are experiencing, always has the biggest impact on those who have the least. And when you look at the impacts on our housing market by our booming economy, when you look at the impacts on a whole host of other markers, that is absolutely true. We are dealing with an enormous amount of success and expansion in industries that already exist in the city. It is, as problems go, pretty much the best problem to have. We're not dealing with deindustrialization, with a huge industry contracting and another expanding, and all the problems that it would be to connect people into new industry. We're not dealing with economic downturn. We are dealing with the problem of success, and I will not bemoan that as a problem, although I do think we have to still work together meaningfully to address it. As a city, I think we need to ensure that the enormous success of our economy and our city is felt by everyone, and that requires us to work to deal with the pressures on, as I've said, the housing market, find ways to ensure people are better off. One of the most important aspects of the tourism strategy is the mention and recognition of fair work. The council last year put an additional £4 million into health and social care, not for additional services, not to tackle backlogs, with the sole purpose of increasing salaries to those that were working in that sector, because we recognised that the alternatives were more attractive. We recognised that people were using their skills in other industries and leaving quicker, and we were having a huge perennial problem of making sure we had the staff that we needed. The effect of that increase was to increase the workforce, to increase our ability to fill vacancies, to retain employment, to make sure we had the right skills. If we're to meet the challenge of our tourist economy, I think the same will apply. I think we need to make sure that the strategy recognises the need for higher wages and more secure work. I know the constraints of many people in this room will face. I know that general managers don't have all the tools at their disposal, whether they're running an attraction or whether they're running a hotel. But I think by working together, we can come up with an Edinburgh Standard of what it really means to support the people who are in work in our city right now, to find ways of better connecting people into those opportunities and better sustaining those opportunities when they're in them. There are some great examples across the city, and I'm sure there are some great examples that people could talk about on every single table in this room of how people are supported into better employment, how their career paths are laid out in a sustainable, empowering and supporting way. But I think we need to make sure that that is the case for everyone across the board. Those who can take further action, I think, need to, and those who can't need to join the chorus of voices in the city, making sure that no one is left behind. Because 2 years ago, the city commissioned a poverty commission, and one of the themes that has come out very strongly is in-work poverty is a reality in this city. And I am not laying that at the door of the tourist economy or the hospitality sector. I'm saying it's a collective responsibility of everyone in the city, and we need every sector of the economy to respond to that in order to make, I think, lives in Edinburgh more sustainable, supported and empowered. I know we can come together to establish a new normal on wages, working practice, on well-being that puts workers at the heart of all our business models by signing up to the Fair Work agenda. It's hard to talk about skills and job market without mentioning, dare I say, I hope this isn't the first time it's been mentioned, the toughness that will be experienced through Brexit and the difficulties it will be for all of us to find the skills and the workforce that will become absolutely crucial for hospitality, tourism, and indeed pretty much every sector of our economy. The Independent Advisory Group on Migration, I think just last week or early this week, suggested a reduction to the government's plan of a £30,000 salary threshold to roughly 25,000, and work visas to help industries like the NHS and health and others sustain and have access to the labour market. I don't think that's good enough. The First Minister outlined an alternative plan for a Scottish solution on immigration controls instead of us bearing the brunt for another misjudged policy by the UK government. And I think it would help protect our talent pool. I hope logic and argument and good sense wins, but our council will be standing with the industry, with you, in trying to secure a better outcome for a sustainable future for Edinburgh, because it is not good enough to try and pull the drawbridge or try and undermine the supply of labour in the city. It will not achieve anything other than undermine the growth that we are relying on for so many of the other ambitious strategies that we have for our city. I did want to talk about environment as well, being one of the themes, because Edinburgh, I think, is used to being at the forefront of most things. I'm used to being at the brunt of most things, especially when it comes to law changes. But whether it's the Enlightenment being ahead of new technologies and science, still pushing new barriers now in data-driven innovation and data science and a whole host of other fields, lean from the front is what Edinburgh does and does very well. And we're going to have to try and reconcile the success of a tourist economy with our aspiration to become a zero-carbon net city by 2030. That is an enormous ask, and I know it's an enormous ask of every organisation, individual in the room. 23% of carbon emissions in the city right now are attributed to commercial uses. That includes hotels, it includes attractions in the city, but it only tells one part of the story in terms of the skin in the game that the tourist economy has, because transport makes up another 30%. And that's before you get to how people have travelled to the city in the first place. So we are going to have to work very closely together in trying to find solutions that sustain our success as a city while meeting our carbon obligations for future generations and our planet. We have to look at our assets and our buildings and what are we doing to minimise carbon, and we have to look at how we are getting people around our city and encouraging them to do so in the most carbon neutral manner. We have 10 years to transform how we do business. We have 10 years to embrace our low carbon economy, meet our obligation, and look at how we produce goods and services. And we'll all have to make meaningful actions to reduce our carbon footprint. And the analysis we published in October on a roadmap to take the city to net zero by 2030, more than half the actions individuals and industry could take to reduce carbon had a payback period of just 8 years. Now, I don't think that's undoable. I think that's within most people's expectations of a return. I think that's within the scope of a reasonable ask. And we need to think medium and long term, make the right investment decisions now, decisions not only about how we work, but I think decisions that show this is eminently doable. We've learned two things from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. One is obviously the meaning of life is 42. And the second is when you're trying to encourage people not to panic, putting the words "don't panic" in big, friendly, yellow letters always helps. I don't think we have to panic when it comes to trying to achieve net zero. I think there are sensible ways we can work with industry, we can work together with public sector, we can work with the experts, many of whom are based within this city doing fantastic work, pushing the frontiers of innovation to try and reduce carbon. I think we can crunch the numbers and show that Edinburgh can get there. We can get there by harnessing our economic growth and success. We can get there by harnessing our innovation and intelligence. The Council's established a commission to arm all sectors of the economy with some of the solutions we're going to need to make progress in the next 10 years if we're to find valuable resource to enable you in your business. And I know a lot of organisations in the room will already be operating within this space, and indeed within many of the themes within the new tourism strategy. Just this morning I met with a business pointer on green tourism that I know a number of organisations in the room will have an existing relationship with, an organisation which helps measure actions and accredit companies to improve place, support people and improve environment. Sounds familiar, I think, from the strategy that we have as a city. We're not starting from a standing start. This is not what the strategy's about. We didn't invent these concepts. What this is about is pulling together the actions that are already being taken forward in the city, learning from each other, sharing best practice, and pushing each other to some of the boundaries of what we can achieve if we have the right information, the right investment plans, and the right will to do it. Earlier this week, I asked the city, is there anywhere else in the world you would rather live? And I think the vast majority of people, the answer was no, although one person did come back and say, I want to live in Edinburgh 10 years ago. Now, pardon my language, but no shit. I would love to live in Edinburgh 10 years ago. I'd be 22 years old. It'd be fantastic. The problem with that logic is that nostalgia doesn't create good policy. Nostalgia, dragging you back to a year that's gone, a place and time that's gone, doesn't give you a good way of looking to the future. The only thing that gives you a good way of looking to the future is looking at what you want to achieve going forward and then taking meaningful action about how you can get there. The good news, I think, on all this is that the concerns that are being raised are not about the what, they are far more about the how. And I think the how is addressable. We are the front door to Scotland in so many ways for visitors and people wanting to move here and bring their expertise and their skills to this country. I think we can get these things right. We can lead the way in a national context and indeed an international context. We can deal with issues people are raising and build on the success. And I want to end with thanking everyone for working so hard for Edinburgh, because we're one of the world's must-see destinations. We're on bucket lists of people across the globe. That didn't happen by accident. It took years of hard work, your hard work, and the city is grateful for the opportunities you have brought us. I hope at the end of this strategy in 10 years' time, we are still grappling with the issues of growth and success. I hope we've not become so insular as to think of ourselves as just another city or pretend that the residential amenity in our city centre of our capital city can be the same as living in a suburb of an average town. It isn't the same. It shouldn't be the same. This is one of the most vibrant and exciting cities in the world to live. It's that vibrancy of things happening that has put our quality of life as unmatched, with Arcadis ranking as one of the most livable cities in the world just a year ago. It's that livability. It's that amazing experience as residents that drives people in their millions to want to visit Edinburgh. I know if we work together in partnership to enhance our city's reputation, put people, place and environment at the heart of our activities, we will not only sustain our success, we'll share it across our communities and establish ourselves firmly as the best city in the world. Thank you very much.